I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my perky, happy-looking co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca Wood.
I'm faking it until I make it. Or at least for the next hour.
All right, yes, and for the next hour, whether we're faking it or actually doing it, well, we'll actually be creating our program For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and family and children and people and animals and plants and protistas and fungi and pretty much everybody and everything, because, like it or not, all of us are together on this wonderful planet called Earth. And today, of course, is a special day for the wonderful planet called Earth. This is, in fact, the winter solstice. So this was the longest night of the year is now behind us. And the days will be getting longer and longer from here on out. And so it's, it's a really nice time to sort of reflect on things, on what's been happening and it's a time for hope, basically, because, this is the point at which the humans throughout history have realized that, okay, after this, it's going to start, days will get longer, and eventually, no matter how cold it is right now, we're going to see the spring, and the plants and animals will all come back, and it'll be great. So, so this is a very good time to be thinking about hope, and we happen to be right on the average temperature today. It's like exactly an average temperature based on a temperature according to my weather app. They averaged it from 1970 to today, which of course is actually still warmer because that's sort of post-global warming. But it's still beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous winter solstice, lots of sun all day long. So get out in it, take a walk. You'll feel better. And and of course, we always feel better after doing our show, which is we're going to talk for just another 5 minutes or so here. And then we have an interview with Kevin Kamps, our good friend from Beyond Nuclear, because Beyond Nuclear has decided to take on the evil corporation Holtec at the Supreme Court. They are actually going to go have a big Supreme Court battle with them over nuclear waste. So let's find out more about that in our interview. Then we'll hear from our wonderful advertisers and patrons. And then, Rebecca, it will be your turn at the mic. And what will we be talking about today?
I will be doing a segment on oranges called You Want to Put What in My Stockings?
Okay. All right. Oranges. Okay, then it's ecological news from around the world. And we have some big ecological news today. Some big good news, some big bad news, but we've got, it's worth sticking around for if you care about the environment, which everyone does, really. I mean, people who, everybody who lives on the planet on some level, I think, cares about the environment. Some people are just able to put aside their care for the environment in order to promote themselves, to get some advantage for themselves. And that's not a good long-term situation for the planet. But as we go into this, as we're looking at the policies and plans of our government and other governments around the world and other peoples around the world, it's clear that, again, the vast majority are moving towards a more sustainable future, are moving towards that green future that we keep talking about and that we keep promoting here, because that's the only way, really, that we have to go forward. I mean, the path that our current government is trying to take us on of increased fossil fuel, increased carbon dioxide, increased global and pollution is not a sustainable path. Okay, that's something that kind of gets lost, and we need to personally remember that our decisions make a big difference in what turns out to happen globally, because what's happening all over the world is people are switching to solar, switching to geothermal, switching to electric transportation, and that is making a difference. The only question is it happening fast enough to save us? And at this point, the answer is no. But here we are on Solstice, and as I said, this is a time for hope, and so we are hopeful. I think that's why we keep doing the show and don't just, go off to some cave in the mountains and try to wait out the collapse of society, because I honestly believe that we are going to figure this out and make the turn, make the change before the everything collapses. And there's proof to do that. There is support for that. Unfortunately, one of the things that kind of counters that, one of the things that makes us think that, well, maybe this isn't going to turn out right, is the current administration's push, and the previous administration's push, to be fair, for nuclear power, which is not a sustainable form of power. And we had a nice interview this past week with Kevin Kamps from Beyond Nuclear, who's talking about exactly why that is. And so we're going to go to that interview in just a second, but I wanted to remind everybody that this is a call-in show, and we are hoping at some point you'll call in. And even if you just want to wish us a happy solstice or a Merry Christmas or a happy Hanukkah or whatever, you can call 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. Jared is standing by watching the phones like a hawk, so call in, please do. You can also send a text to 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841, and we'll read your comment on the air. But I think let's go ahead and go to that. Oh wait, we just got a text. Oh, we got a happy holidays. We got a listener said happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Carrie. Really appreciate that.
Right now, for at least the next few days, we're for a red and green future.
Yes, a seasonally appropriately colored holiday future.
Yep.
Yes. Happy holidays. Very nice. All right. Okay, well, now let's go to our interview with Kevin Kamps. Welcome back to For a Green Future. Please remind our audience of your name and who you're with.
Thanks, Joe. My name is Kevin Kamps, and I serve as radioactive waste specialist at Beyond Nuclear.
Mm-hmm. And welcome back to the show. I asked you on today because I saw there was a Facebook post. You guys are heading for the Supreme Court.
For the second time in a year. We were in the Supreme Court last year. Our side got ruled against, but Beyond Nuclear has its own case that has never gotten the light of day. We've never gotten our day in court. So yeah, we are going back to the Supreme Court. We've petitioned for what's called certiorari to ask the Supreme Court to take up our case. We've met many a deadline recently, and we will hopefully hear back from the Supreme Court by spring as to whether or not we will be granted oral arguments and have our case considered.
Right. And so this case is in regards to the interim storage project, their Holtec's plot to store nuclear waste in basically a parking lot in New Mexico.
This would be the largest high-level radioactive waste dump in the world, up to 173,000 metric tons. So just to give folks an idea of how much that is, currently in the United States, there's just under 100,000 metric tons. This is commercial waste, so this is what has built up since 1957, when the first so-called civilian reactor was fired up in Pennsylvania at Shippingport, just miles from the Ohio state line. So that's many decades, 70 years of high-level radioactive waste accumulating across the country at a grand total of something like 135 commercial reactors. They want to put it all in one place, and even if they took all of it at the current moment anyway and put it in this one place, Holtec's dump in New Mexico, there'd still be this tremendous excess of storage capacity, which has begged the question, do they plan to import foreign high-level radioactive wastes? Do they plan to store military high-level radioactive wastes, of which there is a significant quantity in the country? So even though we're more than a decade into this fight against Holtec in New Mexico, such basic questions have never been answered, let alone our challenges against Holtec's illegalities. And really the topmost illegality is a violation of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, which prohibits private companies like Holtec from storing Department of Energy owned spent nuclear fuel. And the reason for that is that small states like New Mexico, Utah, for decades now have been worried that if interim storage were opened in their state, and the same applies to Nevada even, if interim storage is opened in their state, it will become de facto permanent. This will be the final resting place at the surface of the land, not underground, because there is no permanent repository to export the waste to. So, case in point, an amicus brief was filed by 3 states, the states of New Mexico, Michigan, and Utah, in support of Beyond Nuclear's petition for cert at the Supreme Court. Why would those states join us in our efforts? Well, because New Mexico has been targeted by Holtec for over a decade now. Before that, there was another company. Holtec was a junior partner. It was called Private Fuel Storage. It was a consortium of nuclear power utilities. And Holtec at that time, this is 20 plus years ago, was going to provide the containers at that dump in New Mexico at the Mescalero Apache Indian Reservation. That same company, Private Fuel Storage, with Holtec as a partner, targeted Utah at another Indian reservation. Holtec is a serial violator of environmental justice because they were targeting very vulnerable Native American communities for the worst poisons our society has ever generated. So that's a part of the reason that these states have joined us in our efforts here.
Mm-hmm. So this roughly 100,000 tons of radioactive waste, the amount of propaganda that's been coming out of government agencies these days about this sort of question is just sort of overwhelming. And one of the main things they're touting or saying, they're talking about the volume of the waste being, tiny, that you could fit it in a Coke can, that kind of exaggeration, but it's hundreds of thousands of tons. And so how deadly is that much radioactive waste? I mean, what would happen? I mean, let's say absolute worst case scenario, terrorists break in, steal the waste, and distribute it out across the country in the deadliest way they can think of. How deadly are we talking?
Well, it's a good question. In the US, the nuclear power industry likes to use this propaganda line that you could fit all the high-level radioactive waste from the commercial industry on the perimeter, within the perimeter of a football field, and it would only be something like 30 feet deep. Of course, it keeps getting deeper as time goes on. But my comeback is I sure wouldn't want to be sitting in that stadium, because the gamma and neutron radiation coming off of high-level radioactive waste is deadly, especially when it first comes out of a reactor. But actually, that deadly dose of gamma and neutrons that's just emitted by this waste out to a certain distance will continue to be deadly for 1,000 years into the future. It does dissipate with radioactive decay over time. But even after that first 1,000 years or so, what you still have left are things like plutonium-239. And granted, you might not have the gamma and neutron dose coming off the waste, but plutonium-239 and alpha emitter, if you were to get a microscopic speck in your lung, as by inhaling it with a dust particle, it will likely cause lung cancer. And again, there may be a latency period of years or even decades before that lung cancer manifests, but it's almost guaranteed. That's how ultra-hazardous plutonium is. So no offense to witches, but high-level radioactive waste is this witch's brew of more than 200 radioactive isotopes. Some of the more infamous ones are plutonium, cesium, strontium. The list goes on, but these are deadly substances, and biology doesn't know how to deal with them. So that's what this stuff is. Good luck containing it through engineered barriers for its hazardous persistence, which, don't take it from me, take it from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which was forced under court order, brought by us, again, with legal action in the federal courts decades ago, to acknowledge that high-level radioactive waste is hazardous and deadly for at least 1 million years into the future. So what engineered barrier can contain that won't rust away, that won't degrade and breach? And that's why consolidated interim storage facilities at the surface, especially if they become de facto permanent, are so dangerous, because the containers will fail and release their contents and turn the surrounding region out to great distances into a Chernobyl dead zone right here in our own country.
Mm-hmm. Now, Holtec a few months ago said that they're giving up on the whole idea of this interim storage, and there was much rejoicing. But you're proceeding with the lawsuit anyway. Why do you feel the need to keep pushing the issue?
Even after Holtec admitted defeat, supposedly some months ago now, in New Mexico, and announced their divorce with their New Mexico partner, the Eddy Lee Counties Energy Alliance, which would host the waste on their land. Wouldn't you know, just in recent days, the Eddy Lee Energy Alliance has announced that it will challenge legally the New Mexico state law prohibiting this dump in the state. And wouldn't you know, in all these weeks and months since Holtec admitted defeat, they have not relinquished their license that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission approved. So if Holtec is speaking, you can't trust a word they say. They are liars with a capital LIARS, and so we don't trust them. Mm-hmm. So they might want to try to use this license on that very spot in New Mexico with their partner. They'll remarry their partner. That's a possibility. They could try to take their license-free, compliant, rubber stamp Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The list goes on. The local New Mexico partner could seek to do this with another company, and Holtec could sell them the license. There's so many various ways they could try to resurrect this thing. And in fact, a part of that local announcement the other day was that Eddy Lee Energy Alliance is seeking to join the Department of Energy Collaborative Siting Initiative, so-called, for consolidated interim storage facilities, which Holtec is still a major player in. It used to be called consent-based siting, but the Trump administration doesn't care that much about consent. So they've changed the name to collaborative siting. And so there's all kinds of things swirling. It's a game of radioactive waste dump whack-a-mole that's been going on for decades. It's still going on. That's why, it took us more than a decade to get to where we are. And we're not going to give up this close to the finish line. We hope the Supreme Court will take up our case. We hope that we prevail, because if we do not, then the illegalities that have never been addressed thus far could be used, as I'm saying, at that very site in New Mexico or elsewhere across the country, because they are flagrantly violating the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. They're violating the Administrative Procedure Act. They're violating the separation of powers. Don't take it from me, take it from a leading legal expert on separation of powers between the executive and legislative branches, who filed a friend of the court brief on our side's behalf earlier this year in this very subject matter. So this is the biggest environmental justice battle going on in the country that nobody's ever heard of, or not too many people have. Mm-hmm. They've been targeting Native American reservations or lands since the beginning, truth be told, and they still are. This Holtec site in New Mexico has connections to some 24 plus tribes. It's the NRC that acknowledges that. But the NRC's idea of how to consult with sovereign tribal nations is to send them a form letter. And if the tribe doesn't get back to them, well, they've checked that box off. This is one of the richest archaeological sites in New Mexico, and Holtec wants to dump high-level radioactive waste on top of it.
Now, when you call Holtec a liar, that's not just a random accusation. I mean, we've got lots and lots of examples. The reopening of the Palisades nuclear plant was based on a lie. Basically, they took it over saying they were going to decommission it. 2024, as I recall, like January, they were actually penalized for lying to regulators on various topics. That's not just a baseless accusation, right? That's a statement of fact that they lie.
Holtec is also engaged in bribery on an ongoing basis. They were busted for it in Alabama at the Browns Ferry nuclear power plant, and then proceeded to lie about it on a tax break application form in New Jersey, where they're based. They said under oath that they had never been banned or barred from doing business with a federal agency or a state government, when in fact, after that bribery conviction that they were implicated in, they were banned and barred. Only for 2 months, but still the answer was not no. The answer was yes. They were banned and barred from doing business with the Tennessee Valley Authority. They were fined $2 million for their involvement in that bribery at the highest levels of Holtec. We're talking the CEO, Krishna Singh. And then under oath, he lied about it, said no on this tax break application form, got $260 million in tax breaks from the state of New Jersey, and used it to build his headquarters that he named after himself in Camden, New Jersey, where they make these high-level waste containers. They want to make large nuclear components, even for the small modular reactors, so-called, that they want to build also at the Palisades site and around the world. So, yeah, this company is crooked. This company is criminal. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists just published 2 major exposés in recent weeks about Holtec that I'm very thankful about. It's way overdue. So, yeah, it makes no sense that the federal government, the state of Michigan at Palisades, is partnered with this crooked company. And the reason I think it is they've drunk the Kool-Aid on nuclear power. Holtec will do anything they're asked as long as they're paid huge amounts of money, public money, to do it, no matter how risky the project. That's why I think these government agencies are partnering with this crooked company.
All right, well, that's just about all we have time for. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, another reason we're fighting this dump in New Mexico, and a very similar one in Texas, interim storage partners, that involves other companies, but is only 40 miles away from the New Mexico site. It would turn that part of the country into a nuclear waste sacrifice zone. But it's the transportation risks that really affect the entire country. So Ohio, for example, would get most of the waste from New England, which is a lot of reactors just passing through. Granted, Ohio has waste of its own, but Ohio would catch most of New England's wastes passing through on the rails, mostly, even waste from the mid-Atlantic, because of how the rails are laid in this country, the history of this country. Another really dangerous transportation mode is barges or boats on surface waters. And as we speak, the Department of Energy and its Pacific Northwest National Lab in the Northwest are examining other barging options on the Great Lakes besides just Palisades in Michigan and Point Beach in Wisconsin on Lake Michigan. They're looking at barging from all of the reactors on the Great Lakes because they're looking for the path of least resistance. And believe you me, if one of these barges were to go down in the Great Lakes, this could be catastrophic for 21% of the world's surface fresh water. And if we stop these dumps, we stop those shipments, at least for the time being.
All right. Well, good luck. What's your website again if people want to find out more about this?
Yeah, it's just www.beyondnuclear.org. And we do have a centralized storage section, which goes back literally to 2009.
Okay. So they've been fighting this fight for a long time. And of course, they need to because, as Kevin said, we're creating a 1,000,000-year long problem for our descendants here. So we can't afford to drop our guard. But one thing we can definitely afford to do is to thank the people and the organizations that make this show possible, our patrons and sponsors. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District.
Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before by maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future.
Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature, your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And of course, we also want to thank our patrons. And our patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page, and before you do it, they got scrolled through and picked a level that matched their budget, or they picked their own level. And every month now, a little bit comes out of their accounts, comes over to us, and that is how we can afford to bring you this fantastic program. And one more little announcement here from me and the entire For a Green Future team. The future isn't imagined, it's built. We are renovating For a Green Future to fit the needs of every generation. New leadership, a refreshed mission, and a digital backbone powered by AI to deliver timely climate action right to you. We hired Shabazz Khan as our media and communications specialist. Our media and communications will be connecting people with science, solution, and stories that matter faster, clearer, and more accessible than ever. The torch is steady, the flame is bright, and the message is simple. Care for the environment, care for each other, and act with knowledge, because the future belongs to those who prepare today. Visit Joe DeMare foragreenfuture.org. That's JOEDEMARE agreenfuture.org to join, learn, and act. All right, Rebecca, that brings us to your part of the show. What are we talking about today?
Okie dokie. Well, this was actually suggested by a friend, the topic of oranges, because they go in Christmas stockings sometimes with old-fashioned people and or somewhat broke people, like my parents were growing up. So, yeah, we wanted to look into that a little bit. So an orange is a sweet, round citrus fruit grown in these tropics and subtropics of the world. The modern orange is a hybrid of pomelo and mandarin orange, although mandarin is also a type of orange, which I found interesting because I just assumed pomelo, because it had a weird name, was a hybrid of something. But no, it's the parents, not the children of oranges, apparently. It's the ancestor, not a descendant. I don't know. something along those lines. They have lots of vitamin C, fiber, and antioxidants, and they're used in cooking fresh cooked or juiced or peeled for zest. I guess maybe the cooked orange would be marmalade. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
I can't think of anything else that cooked oranges go in.
Oh, well, I mean, they in a lot of dishes, like orange chicken, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're just used for flavor. You don't actually eat the orange, right? It's spent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. That I'm pretty sure that would be weird.
I
Anyway,
don't know. Maybe
afterwards,
one of our
then,
listeners has an orange recipe that they like to.
There
like
we go.
bacon
Yeah.
Orange or something.
go
like
right
that.
ahead.
Give us a call.
Take it, or orange chicken in Chinese restaurants. But yeah, they originated in South China, Northeast India, and Myanmar,
Oh.
and the majority are currently grown in Brazil, Brazil and India, mostly Brazil, really. Right. The three varieties are sweet oranges, bitter oranges, and mandarin oranges. Bitter oranges are mostly used in essential oils and cooking because they don't taste good if you just eat them. Mandarins, this jives with my own experience, are small and easy to peel.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like them. They're less overwhelming,
Uh-huh.
if you have some neurodivergence going on, this can be important. But yeah, a pomelo is actually a green pear-shaped fruit with citrus fruit with pink-orange flesh. And they're the ancestor of, I believe it was, what do you call those things? Not pineapple, the other grapefruits. Yeah, I confuse grapefruits and pineapples because they're both gross in my mind. So same thing basically. Right. So, and apparently I did not think, I thought, we just put them in stockings because they were something neat and they used to be exotic, a long time ago. In
Right.
the 1800s, really even almost up to the 1950s still, they had that aura, But yeah, apparently there was a legend about St. Nicholas who became sort of he had a lot of the earlier pagan legends grafted onto him and became Santa Claus. But there's a legend that he was walking around Turkey. He was from Turkey, apparently.
Huh.
He was a bishop in Turkey. And he was walking around and he ran into three poor girls who didn't have any money for dowries, so they were going to remain in poverty all their lives. And he solved their problems by tossing gold coins into their stockings instead of just handing them money for some reason. I understand there was no favors exchanged or services exchanged for these gold coins. But when you do that kind of thing, you're not a saint, so whatever. But
Well,
on a Saturday night, So yeah. So anyway, and that is how the original Dutch custom was that you would have treats or money left in your shoes, but it switched to stockings because of this. And also, citrus fruits were cool. In the Victorian era, only at least moderately wealthy people could afford them. And they were good for your health. You might not get a cold for the week after Christmas if you get sick or get consumption. Everybody's always had consumption, which I think was actually TB, but
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oranges. What are some of the drawbacks? Well, they are many. The way that they're currently grown, anyway. They, according to sources, they have a high water, fertilizer, and pesticide input. So you gotta take a lot of that stuff away from natural wildlife and your showers and things. Especially they grow them in California, which is mostly desert. So that's not a good idea. I mean, it's the right kind of climate, but you have to use a whole lot of water to make that work, is the reason. And yeah, the pollution harms biodiversity, and the monoculture increases pest and disease risk. And of course, there's transport emissions, especially since you gotta ship in all those pesticides and stuff and the fertilizers, and then you got to shift the oranges away to the sorting plant, and then you got to You got to ship them out to the juice plant if they're going there, and they just end up doing a lot of traveling before they even get to you. So there's that. They are darn good for like a little, if you sort of forgot to take your vitamins that day and you want something quick at bedtime, So there's that. Oranges are, to agree, important, and orange juice. And deforestation. They're leading to deforestation, especially in Africa. There was a scandal with the Rainforest Alliance certification system, because it was found that a lot of this is mostly about chocolate. Like, they do certify oranges as well and orange juice, but there's trouble because a lot of the places they were certifying in Africa turned out to be not that great human rights wise. So I don't know. I assume they're doing their best, but it's just hard to keep track of things. But you're probably still at least more likely to get a place with good human rights practices and ecological practices if you go through if you look for their seal of approval for the Rainforest Alliance. And they're according to Impactful Ninja, they're described as they describe oranges as carbon and water footprints as only moderate, and their general ecological impact therefore is only moderate. So, it all depends. Where is the line for moderate versus serious, Some of the benefits are that the trees sequester carbon, the fallen fruit, waste fruit, enriches the soil, and also the Rainforest Alliance was doing an interesting thing with integrated pest management, where they have this thing called citrus greening, that because they're grown because of global warming and because they're grown in just enormous monoculture, they're very vulnerable to this bacteria that causes citrus greening. And what they're doing about that is they're finding ecologically beneficial ways to encourage various predator insects that go after the insect that spreads the bacteria. So that seems like a goodish idea, as far as I can tell, anyway. So yeah, oranges. They're kind of cool, and I do not mind finding one in my stocking.
All right. Yeah, that greening is a really terrible. It's really destroying the Florida citrus crop there. But it's nice to see that they're trying to enlist insects in the battle against it. That's a good, sustainable way to fight it. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you, Rebecca, for reminding us about oranges and stockings. Okay, now it's time for ecological news, and we have a ton of it, which is why I kind of cut our intro short a little bit. But first story, and this is apropos of our interview with Kevin Kamps there, Harvard School of Public Health. So this is Harvard, all right? This is not, a Florida Community College study. This is like one of the most respected universities in the world.
The Bushes having gone there apart.
On December 18th, they released a study. Title is Cancer Risk May Increase with Proximity to Nuclear Plants. Now, the title has the word may in it, but if you actually read the article, yes, if you live closer to a nuclear plant, you are much more likely to get cancer. This is sort of the final definitive proof. There have been a lot of contradictory studies, but what they did, very simply, they took zip codes, and they took the locations of nuclear plants, and they used the Massachusetts Cancer Incidence Database. So whenever somebody gets cancer in Massachusetts, the state keeps track of it. And so what they found was that the closer you live to a nuclear plant, the more likely you are to get cancer. This effect is about 6 miles. You have a 6-mile diameter around a nuclear plant where you definitely see increased cancer, and the increase falls away with distance. So the people who are 1 mile are much more likely than the people who are 6 miles, but it's very clear the nuclear plant is the center of these cancer hotspots.
So you wanna get 7 miles between you and a nuke plant,
at least.
If you're buying a house.
And
or
so
building a house.
So they part of this study was they published this nice little map, and it just very clearly shows, you've got the Duke plants, then you've got all these red zip codes right around it, and then it sort of fades out. And what they've estimated, they looked at the years 2000 to 2018, and during that time, they've estimated each Duke plant increased the cancer by about 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you take, that's with all three add up to about 20,000 extra cases of cancer. So if you extrapolate that to our roughly 100 reactors around the country, that means during that 18-year period, about 600,000 people got cancer who would not have gotten cancer had they not lived within 6 miles of a nuclear plant. And so I just want to pause a minute, and there is so much disinformation and so much denial about nuclear power and its health impacts that a study like this one is really essential at this point when the Trump administration saying they put out a goal they want to have 10 new nuclear plants started in the next 5 years or so. And the problem of that, of course, is that they're not going to the Trump administration is not going to point this study out to the people in those cities. And yet, This is what I call essential information. Before you accept a nuclear plant into your community, you should know that within 5 miles of it, you are much more likely to get cancer than if you live more than 5 miles away. So this kind of supports our next this supplemental story. In the Philippines, the Filipino bishops opposed nuclear power plant plan. It's a study in Catholic World Report on December 15th. And in the Philippines, in western Pangasinan, they had a big press conference, and they're citing safety, environmental, and moral concerns, which,
Right.
It's it really is a moral question. Like Kevin said, we're dumping this stuff for 1 million years onto our future generations. That is definitely amoral.
Plus, they tend to come with a fair amount of corruption. So,
That is true. Yeah.
that's a moral concern.
Something about
I'm concerned.
building a source of energy that's going to be poisoning people for 1 million years tends to attract people that aren't, they're a little less concerned about, doing the right thing. And so they also point out that we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Fukushima. And in this pastoral letter that they wrote, they say there was a really cute quote in there. Nuclear power is fundamentally incompatible with the vision of a symbiotic society that respects all life without exception. And, hear to the
Right.
to the
It
bishops
sure as
of the
heck is.
Philippines. Yeah. All right. On to the next story. And this one is in the personal vindication category, because for a long time, I have said that the contrails from jet planes, and we're talking contrails, right? We're not talking chemtrails. We're just talking the little clouds that form as a jet goes through an area of the atmosphere that's super saturated. I have long said that they mask global warming because they reflect solar radiation back out into space before it reaches the Earth. And in this article on September 29th in nature.com, the title is The Social Costs of Aviation, CO2, and Contrail Cirrus. And what they've said here, they had a toss-off line that contrails during the day actually have a net cooling effect, whereas contrails at night have a warming effect because...
And that never happened when I wasn't out after dark as much when I was a kid, but I don't remember that happening, that where it suddenly warms up at night as much as it seems to do now that I'm an adult,
Yes, nighttime temperatures are increasing more quickly than...
Especially like after 2000, it seemed like that was happening a lot.
Right. Because contrails, like I say, both block and insulate. But the thing is that there's 10 times as many jet flights during the day
Right.
as are at night, because
Right.
nobody wants to do the overnight jet thing.
is no fun.
Right. And so so they basically vindicated something I've been saying for decades. Okay, that's why I grabbed this story and included it this week. In terms of what the main thrust of this article, they're talking about the social costs of aviation. What they did was they tried to put a dollar amount on each ton of CO2 that's put into the air by a jet plane, and their estimates are between $400 and $1,800 per ton. And the average airplane flight puts about 5 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. So anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 worth of damage is done to our greater society by each jet flight. And so that includes things like increased damages from storms, increased health effects from the microsoot, and everything like that. So even though contrails cause like short-term cooling, they cause long-term heating because you're putting the CO2 in the air. So you get cooling for some hours as the contrail exists and then dissipates. But the global heating, according to this, is going to take, after 100 years, 60% of the CO2 comes out of the atmosphere. And after 1,000 years, you've only taken 80% of it out. So long-term damage, short-term masking, contrails are not, they're not doing us any favors. Okay, next story. Since I got the "see, I was right" thing out of my system, thank you for indulging me in that. Next story, thedriven.io on December 15th, and the title is "Remarkable: World's Largest Battery Electric Ship Powers Up for First Time in Australia." So this is really good news because transportation has to be electrified. All right, this is one of the things that we've got to just switch from burning fossils to using electric. And so they just made the largest fully electric powered boat in human history. Now, a lot of ships use kind of like hybrid drives. That is, they have diesel engines and those charge batteries, and then it's actually the batteries that drive electric motors that drive the boat. In fact, one of our boats that are docked here in Toledo at the Great Lakes Museum has that kind of propulsion system, and you can go look. It's pretty impressive. But this is a ship that has no fossil fuel engine at all, and it's built by a company called Incat Tasmania, and it was built at the Hobart shipyards. Right now, the ship is only called Hull 96, but it's 400 feet long. It can carry 2,100 passengers and 220 vehicles. It has 40 megawatt hours worth of batteries, and it's going to be used down in South America. There's a South American company that's going to use it as a ferry, and this company has orders for 3 more from Denmark so far. And one of the nice things, about this, I've ridden ferries a fair number of times, and you always get that exhaust. At some point, the diesel fumes, kind of find you wherever you try to hang out on the boat. This, of course, there's no fumes at all because it's electric, and so it's just a huge step in the right direction. So I thought I'd put a little bit of good news in there. Okay, next story, and this is unfortunately very bad news, and that is that Ford is dumping their whole EV plans. They've decided to back off from EVs. They're getting rid of the Ford F-150 Lightning pickup truck. Wonderful truck that you can use to power your house when the power's out. But this is directly, in their public statements, they're basically putting this directly on the Trump policies, where he's gotten rid of, we've reported before, he's eliminated the CAFE standards for the fleet. And of course, he eliminated the tax credits. And they're using both those things as excuses for getting out of the EV business. They're going to focus more on the plug-in hybrids. And I have a plug-in hybrid, as you know, the Wonder Van, which I love dearly. But a full EV is superior to a plug-in hybrid. I bought my car 5 years ago now, well, almost 6 years ago. And, it was the best available at the time. But if I were buying a car today, a new car, I would definitely go 100% EV. But, they're laying off thousands of people, and, there was a huge surge of purchases of EVs to beat the September 30th deadline for the expiration of the tax credits. And so they're using the 10% drop in orders from November 24 to November 25 to justify eliminating the whole product line, which is crazy. So bad decision by Ford. And once again, it puts U.S. manufacturers behind international manufacturing. Okay, we got a couple more stories here. Got to race through. A few years ago, we had people on because they were all opposed to Ohio State building a combined heat and power plant powered by fracked natural gas, fracked methane, I should say. What has happened is exactly what was predicted. This plant is 75% over budget. It was promised that it would only cost $278 million and be functional by 2023. It's up to $420 million so far, and it won't be ready till 2026. So 3 years behind, 75% over budget. A lot of us testified against it, including myself. And even now, Ohio State would be better off not finishing this white elephant of a plant and switching over to geothermal and solar and wind. But what we do know that there's corruption involved because Sam Randazzo, who has since committed suicide for being, accepting bribes, he was one of the main promoters of this, and he actually mocked. We had a guest on a few weeks ago, Kathy Cohen Becker. He mocked her testimony,
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, so he's gone, but the plant, the waste of building a natural gas plant continues. Just two more stories, and just a couple more minutes. PV Magazine, December 15th. Germany brings world's first supercapacitor StatCom online. And what a capacitor plant, capacitors are just, they're like two plates that you put an electric field into, and as long as you keep the power going, that electric field stays where it is. But as soon as you turn the power off, you get this surge of power back. So it's like the electric field expands across the plates. It's sitting there waiting. All that energy is just stored there, and then you get it all back whenever you want it. And so they've been working on this. It can give you very high currents in milliseconds, and it replaces. You could do this instead of batteries, so it uses less rare earth minerals and things like that. And it could also take the place of synchronous condensers in order to keep the grid stable. So good news there from Germany. Last story, and unfortunately, we got to leave ourselves on a negative note here. Inside Climate News on December 18th. SPEED Act passes in House despite changes that threaten clean power projects. And what has happened is this law is it drastically changes the requirements, the environmental requirements for new power projects. And the tricky thing here is that at first it was supported by clean energy companies and clean energy organizations because it was going to cut red tape for wind turbines and solar panels and geothermal. But at the last minute, the Republicans who sponsored it cut all that out, and now it only cuts out the red tape for fossil fuel.
Okay, that's not good.
Yeah. And it does things like it changes the time you can bring a NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act, lawsuit. They changed it from 6 years to 150 days. And now the only people that are allowed to bring NEPA lawsuits are people or organizations that both testified during a public comment period of a new project or new law and are directly, personally affected negatively. And so, in other words, almost nobody. And NEPA has been probably the single law that has most protected Americans from having rivers that catch fire and having air that's unbreathable. And so they're gutting NEPA, and they used cutting red tape for renewable energy projects as the lever, as the excuse, but instead they flipped it around, and now it's a completely just polluting fossil fuel benefiting law. So let's hope that the SPEED Act goes down in the Senate. It passed the House 221 to 196, including 11 Democrats, unfortunately. So now it goes to the Senate, and let's hope that it dies there, because this is a reform that is not only not needed, but it would definitely be harmful, directly harmful to Americans. And if one of these projects that you could sue under NEPA happens, right, and it turns out that it's hurting you, in the past, you could use the NEPA to say, look, this is a bad thing. The government shouldn't be allowed to do this.
Right.
But now, if you didn't know ahead of time and testify during the public comment period, now you don't get to do anything. Now you just have to sit back and take whatever kind of pollution or ecological problems it causes. So, bad news there. All right. But as I said at the start, this is equinox, so this is a day of hope. So get outside, enjoy the sunshine, and remember, there is hope as long as people keep fighting. And so,
We used to say in the Unitarian Church that, we saw that the legend of Jesus' birth as being a metaphor for new things being brought forth from within all of us. We still all have new reserves of things that we haven't used yet inside of ourselves, and things like hope that you might think are gone, but they're not. They're just a little tiny embryo inside you, inside your mind, and
bring that
at the
forward.
darkest time of the year and the darkest time of human history, possibly, it's time to give birth. Hallelujah.
All right. And so, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Blessed Solstice. We'll be back next week, folks. Thanks for listening. This is Joe DeMare
And Rebecca Wood.
signing off.
Is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done.